Good evening and welcome to the Candidate Forum for Los Gatos Town Council. My name is Kathy Merdfeld and I'm co-director of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters for Southwest Santa Clara Valley, which covers 4 communities: Saratoga, Los Gatos, Montsereno, and Campbell. Tonight, the League of Women Voters is pleased to sponsor the event, which gives you, the community, an opportunity to hear and learn about the candidates. It also gives the League an opportunity to further our mission, which is to provide information to all the voters so that they're informed and educated when they cast their votes. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. It promotes informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The town of Los Gatos does not endorse or support any candidate or political party. We thank the town for allowing us to hold our forum in their civic center this evening. KCAT will be filming and televising tonight's forum, so a special thanks to them for making the viewing of our forum possible for a wider audience. The forum will be aired live on Channel 15 and rebroadcast weekdays at 9 a.m., as well as some other times that you'll be able to find on either the League of Women Voters Facebook page or the League's website. We have provided information on the table in the lobby about joining the League. We are always looking for new members. There is also information about our 6 candidate forums and 11 pros and cons sessions that the League is holding during this election season. We're also sponsoring 2 important education programs. One is about spending on water bonds, and the other is on clean energy. So please take a look at the table after the forum and get the information on our events. Our forum tonight is highly scripted. Our moderator will be going over the structure of the forum and introducing the 3 candidates who are running for 2 seats on the Los Gatos Town Council in just a minute. But before I do that, I would like to introduce our support team for tonight. First, it's my pleasure to introduce the president of our local league, Hannah Atani. She is an enthusiastic supporter of all that we do. Next, our greeters, Dennis and Tom Picaro and Meg Garberson. They will be collecting your question cards. If you need a card, just raise your hand and they will pass one to you. Once you've filled it out with a question, pass it to the end of the row. It will be collected and given to our question sorters. Tonight, our question sorters are Wendy Endry and Emily Lowe. They will be reviewing the questions, making sure there are no duplicates are asked, and that they choose ones that are of general concern and issues that each candidate will have the opportunity to answer. Our timekeeper tonight is Daniel Endry, and more will be said about the time limits by our moderator. And now I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for tonight, Mrs. Eleanor Yick. As an educator, she held positions as a teacher, principal, director of curriculum, and superintendent. She's been a longtime League member, serving the League as its president and most recently as the chair of a state study on higher education. We are fortunate to have her as our moderator this evening. Please join me in giving Ms. Yick a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Welcome to today's candidate forum featuring candidates for the Los Gatos Town Council. The 3 candidates running for the 2 open seats are incumbent Marcia Jensen, Larry Maggio, and incumbent and current mayor Barbara Spector. I am Eleanor Yick, current Education Director of the League of Women Voters of Southwest Santa Clara and the moderator for today's forum, which is scheduled to last approximately 1 hour. The format for today's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement. Next, the candidates will respond to questions from our audience in a randomized manner. Submitted questions should be of general interest as each candidate will respond. Question sorters, who are league members, will review, select, and/or combine the questions that have been submitted. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. At the end of audience questions, and if there is enough time, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one other candidate a question. The question must be stated within 30 seconds. The addressed candidate has 1 minute to respond, and the questioner then has 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Finally, the candidates will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. To help keep us on track, we have our timekeeper, Dan Hendry, who will signal each candidate when their time is up, 1 minute, 30 seconds, or stop. In the interest of time and decorum, the League asks our audience and candidates to abide by the following. The questions to the candidates must be written on cards provided by the League and available from our hosts and hostesses tonight. They will be collected, passed to the end of your row, and it can be collected by one of the League members. We request no audience demonstrations, such as clapping, hooping, or hollering, or any of those things. We request that you turn off all electronic devices that beep. And I just want to reiterate that this event is being filmed and will be available on a local TV station and also on our League's website shortly. The candidates have also agreed that the moderator will enforce strict time limits. After the moderator says, "Thank you, your time is up," please end your comments as quickly as possible. The candidates are requested not to interrupt each other. And you'll notice the candidates have not brought props with them, but they certainly have a notepad and can take notes as we go along. Now, I would like to reintroduce the 3 candidates who are running for the 2 open seats on the Los Gatos Town Council. The candidates are seated in the order they selected prior to the forum. So I'm pleased to introduce Barbara Spector, Marcia Jensen, and Larry Maragio. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to participate in today's forum. We are now ready to begin with 2-minute opening statements, and we'll begin with Ms. Spector.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and welcome to our forum. My name is Barbara Spector. I am mayor of the town of Los Gatos. But professionally, besides being mayor, I am a civil trial attorney and a mediator. And I have received my legal training at the University of, at Santa Clara University and at Harvard Law School. I am running in this election because I want to take my experience to the significant issues that this town will be facing in the next few years. Of course, the first one that's going to come to everybody's mind is the North 40. And in that regard, I chaired the North 40 Advisory Committee. And this past year, as mayor, I've been chairing all of the meetings that we've had on the council level on the North 40. I anticipate that in the near future, this council, with regard to the North 40, will be making decisions relating to the lawsuit currently pending against the town, and will also be making decisions with regard to specific plan revisions, which are just starting out now with the General Plan Committee. Another significant issue are the unfunded pension liabilities. As a member of the Finance Committee, I was one of the 2 people who brought forward to the council as a whole a proposal for paying down our indebtedness in order to decrease the amount of interest that we have to pay. Parking garage. That is also an issue that I have been working on as a member of the ad hoc Infrastructure and Parking Committee, and we have brought forward a proposal to the council, which we will be considering to have 300 units of parking in the downtown. All of these issues will be coming forward, have been brought forward, and will be coming forward to the council, and will be considered by whomever is elected in this next election.
Thank you very much. And now, Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Ms. Yick. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this tonight, and thank you for the volunteers for coming out and staffing this, and for all of you for coming out. My name is Marcia Jensen. I'm very proud to have been your representative on the Los Gatos Town Council for the last 4 years. Before that, I also served as planning commissioner not once, but twice in 2 separate stints. So I've been serving the town for quite some time, and I am very proud of my public service. And I come from a public service background, worked in a public law firm, the Alameda County DA's office, and then was a federal prosecutor. And so I'm trying to bring those skills also to the town council. But I'd like to talk about what I'm proud of having accomplished in the last 4 years, and that is really I'd sum up as starting partnerships with residents, with our schools, and with our regional partners to try to solve some issues that are facing the town. So as mayor, I convened the first ever joint meeting with our schools to tackle safe routes to school, which also focuses on traffic. Partnered with West Valley mayors during the summer when the council was on recess last July to form a committee to deal with regional transportation issues in the West Valley corridor, which is going on now. And also met with residents over a number of years to resolve longstanding issues such as Hillbrook School. I've been a resident of Los Gatos for since 1985. My children graduated from Los Gatos schools all the way from Van Meter to Fisher to Los Gatos High. My husband actually graduated from Los Gatos High School. So we have quite a history in Los Gatos, and I hope that I can serve you further for the next 4 years.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maggio.
Good evening, and thank you also to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's forum. My name is Larry Maggio. I'm a third generation to the St. Clair Valley. I've lived in Los Gatos now for 5.5 years. I'm raising my 12-year-old son who attends Fisher Middle School. My background consists of attending West Valley College, where I study administration and justice. I have a law enforcement background with the military police in the United States Army. I retired in 1996 as a military police investigator. I became a business owner doing traffic control, and a couple of years later after that, in 1999, I joined, I became employed with Pacific Bell, which is now AT&T. I've been there for 17.5 years, and I'm looking forward to retirement here in a couple of years from there. My reason why I'm running for town council is I see the issues, I've been following the issues with the North 40, with the traffic impacts that we have in town, the parking that we have in downtown, but mostly we have to look at the impacts of everything else that's going on with our town, with the impacts of everything else. I'm kind of running on with that, but in a nutshell, I'm running because I got inspired by my nephew who graduated West Point. When I went to West Point, I realized that going for the goal, going for the top, and doing your best is the main thing to do. So I decided to run for council, and I'm here to work very hard for the community, for the public, and for the town of Los Gatos. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to switch to the audience questions, and so each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to these questions. And the first one is, what past accomplishments specifically can you point to that demonstrate your leadership skills? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Maggio.
Leadership skills. Once I said I was in the military police. I learned military leadership where I had to become a team leader, squad leader, and I've got 2 national defense medals, and in time of conflicts, had all my guys return home safely. Leadership skills also went into my business, where I was the chief of operations for traffic control, where we performed traffic operations during the BART expansion up at the San Francisco airport. Also, the local areas of doing funeral processions with the funeral escorts. And that's my...
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
I'm going to talk about personal accomplishments. I was the first individual in my family to go to college, and I went to Cal. I graduated from Cal. I first was a teacher at the high school level, then I was an instructor at the community college level. From there, I went on to, as I said before, went to Santa Clara University and Harvard, where I became a lawyer and a mediator. And I think this is a great accomplishment sitting up here with these other two folks, having been on the council and having served as mayor and also as a planning commissioner. I consider all of those things significant, especially when you look back on the fact that not only was I the first person in my family to go to college, but I started out my education on a one-room schoolhouse with 12 people in 8th grades, the same schoolhouse my dad went to.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jensen?
I'm going to focus on accomplishments for the town of Los Gatos. I was chair of the Planning Commission for actually 2 years in a row of my first stint, and was first appointed during the earthquake. And so we had a lot of experience in renovating and restructuring our downtown instead of red tagging everything. As mayor this last year, I took it upon myself to champion our green bike lanes in our schools by bringing them together for a partnership meeting with the council. We now, in April, I was proud to open the first green bike lanes, continuing to work with the schools to alleviate traffic issues around the schools and to work with them and bring them into the government process because they're such an integral part of our community. I was also a mayor when the very difficult issue of Hillbrook School was finally resolved, and when the very difficult issue of adopting a specific plan was finally occurred during my term as mayor, and that was a lot of work to get a lot of people together on an 8-year project. I'm also proud of the work that I did with the West Valley Regional Mayors to get a voice heard at the VTA.
Thank you very much. The next question, and we'll begin this time with Ms. Jensen. I know there are a myriad of reasons why building a school on the North 40 has said to be impossible. But to me, it's just common sense that the North 40 have some sort of educational building. What is your opinion?
Well, I'm not going to go into, as I normally do, all of my long, drawn-out explanations about legalities. So I'll just say that there are California restrictions upon where a public school can be built, and you also have to think about paying the property owner for that school land. And so there are ways to do that, ways not to do it. The applicants for the North 40 actually came together with our schools and reached an agreement whereby they would agree, if the North 40 plan was approved, to give 2 acres for a school site either on the North 40 land or somewhere else in town, or give $6.5 million over and above what state law requires for a school facility. So sometimes it doesn't make sense to put one particularly there, and there are restrictions on where it could be on that property. But that project did come forward with helping out our schools with that agreement. In fact, the schools agreed to support the North 40 application because of that agreement.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maggio?
The education system is one of the greatest things and assets to our community and our children. Looking at a school on the North 40 property, if we had development there where we had an abundance of children to meet the needs of the schools, would be practical. But in a sense, we'd also increase the traffic. And one of my number one items is the impact of traffic in our town, along with overcrowding of the other schools. I was wondering what was going on over there. So I would see that the education and having a school at the North 40 would be probably practical if we had proper housing and the people that were there living in there. And that would tend to be for low-income, medium-income housing that would bring families here that would have children. And obviously, we need to have a school for them close by and within a safety range of being safe.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
Thank you. Over the past year or so, when the North 40 was coming forward, the people on the council received probably hundreds, if not thousands, of emails. They tended to focus on certain issue areas, and one of them was, why don't you, council, put a school on the North 40? If you're going to have all that housing, you should put a school. Well, there are always limitations, and life isn't always as clear-cut as the email senders might think. From a legal point of view, as was pointed out, there are limitations on the mandates that you can put on a property owner or development with regard to schools. From a practical point of view, there are monetary issues. How are you going to pay the property owner for the cost of his or her property? And lastly, as again was pointed out, in this instance, and it's actually the first instance of which I am aware, the developer did enter into an agreement with the school district, and it was done at a public meeting, although lots of people don't know about it, and I'm going to stop now.
Thank you. Our next question, again, is about the North 40. Regardless of the current North 40 application and lawsuit, what would you like to see built on the North 40 property? And we'll begin with you, Ms. Spector.
Well, that's an interesting question, since we are facing a lawsuit, and I'm always hesitant to talk when there is a lawsuit pending, but let me think on that. I would like there to be housing for the identified needs, which is the generation Gen Y or the millennials, and our senior citizens. In that way, that you could affect that would be by having the square footage reduced so that it would be affordable. So that is one thing I would like. I would like there to be commercial for our unmet needs, which financial analyses has shown to be general merchandise and building materials. So if we could meet those two unmet needs from the commercial and from the residential, that would be a good thing.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
Well, as one of the people who voted for this specific plan and who voted for the application, I'm actually satisfied with the application that we received. What would I like to be built there? A mixed-use development which has services that are available within walking distance of people who want to use it, which this application would have satisfied. That would help with traffic issues, because hopefully we wouldn't be getting in our cars and could go somewhere else. This application also satisfied our housing needs. It gave us 49 units for seniors, which is a population that needs housing in Los Gatos. It gave us not affordable, but more affordable housing. And as to the commercial, I remember a time we've gotten lots of things about what people want us to use. Golf course, Costco with a soccer field on top. There's limitations about what we can do. But I actually thought that the application did come forward with something that met our plan, and that's why I supported it, and I thought it was faithful to the plan, which is why I voted for it.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
Well, that's a common question I get all the time. What would you do with the North 40, or what would you like to see there? I do know that there's a need for our medium income folks, teachers, police officers, public safety. They're living out of town. A lot of them live out of town. They can't afford Los Gatos. And they should be able to live in the town that they work in. A lot of my friends that are in law enforcement actually live in the Central Valley, and they can't afford this area. But yet, they have to figure out ways of being here to work. To me, that's not okay. And if we have the opportunity to build affordable housing for these folks, and where they can move in and enjoy a neighborhood that's best fitted for them, that's great. We also need some more open space for our kids. I manage coach baseball, and that's just one of the aspects. So maybe some open space for the North 40 would be appropriate. And we also need some senior housing. The original plan called for housing above a commercial building. I have a 96-year-old grandmother who's going to be 97, and I'll stop.
Thank you. Next question. Los Gatos has a reputation as having very stringent building codes. What is your opinion of the current building codes in light of the many tear downs and remodels that are taking place in town? We'll begin with you, Mr. Maggio.
Can you repeat that the first part of that question?
Let me repeat the whole thing. Los Gatos has a reputation as having very stringent building codes. What is your opinion of the current building codes in light of the many tear downs and remodels that are taking place in town?
Well, I feel that owners of homes that want to buy older homes and refurbish them, and with the current laws and rules, that they should have the opportunity to do that. But it has to meet with the general plan of our town, and if there are specifics that need to be followed, they also need to adhere to those requirements as well. We don't want to change the allure of our town that we currently have because we all enjoy the old town of Los Gatos. So is there something that we could change on that? I think we could take it by case and look at what's needed and go from there.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
Thank you. I'm going to take the question referenced building codes as our general plan and our ordinances, our planning documents. And those documents have been vetted by the Planning Commission, by the Town Council, and by the community. And so when we enact those ordinances, then I believe that they should be followed by our deciding bodies. Now, having said that, what you'll find if you come to a Planning Commission meeting or a Town Council meeting is that these rules are not black and white. There's always some gray area for the decision makers to do their balancing. So at this juncture, I don't have any specific general plan or planning ordinance that I would change, with one exception. That is the plan development. I've always wanted to get rid of our plan development ordinance and get a new one, and I think that's a work in process. So other than that, I'm good with what we have. It's up to the decision makers to decide how to implement those ordinances.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
Following up a little bit on Ms. Spector's comments, the plan development ordinance is something where you will think of it if you've driven around town, Bluebird Lane, the old Swanson Ford, Laurel Mews, those are planned developments. One of the first things I wanted to do as a council member was change that. That was 4 years ago. I worked on an ad hoc committee with Ms. Spector, and we brought forward some different suggestions. Then we actually went to a different community, and we're still working on it 4 years later. So if I'm lucky enough to be elected, I'll still be working on it. So we want to change the rules so that you cannot build those little houses all together like you could put them outside. But with tear downs, I think that they're referring to older houses that get bought. We've had controversies in the council just recently about which neighborhood do you stay with, the one that's you're wanting to tear down, or do you build something new? It's a discretionary question. We have guidelines, and I worked as a planner for the town on the residential design guidelines to make that work and try to interpret them.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Jensen. In your opinion, should the Los Gatos Town Council have term limits? If yes, why? If no, why not?
I actually think term limits is reasonable. Our president can only serve 2 years. Our various people can serve, a certain amount of time. However, to change it, it has to be brought forward by the citizens. Nobody's been clamoring to have term limits. And so theoretically, people think that we're okay. There's also a value in expertise and experience so that you carry something over and they are familiar with the issues and know what they are. And if the other way that it could happen is the council could vote to put something on the ballot, which would be a cost to the town. And if it's not brought forward by the citizens, then we have not done that. We actually discussed that when Steve Leonardis was mayor and decided not to do it because we had not got an outcry for term limits, and we did not want to spend the money to put it on the ballot.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
Term limits is something that I've thought about, and like Marcia was mentioning, the term limits for presidency is 2 terms. I believe there's no mandated rule with the state of California, but it should be left up to the citizens to have term limits. I believe that we should have some type of term limits because otherwise we get too much of a career politician involved in making and doing things within our community, and we are a community that makes up this town. It should be of our citizens, and everybody has different perspectives and ideas, and if we had term limits, I think that would be beneficial for everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
Thank you. The issue of term limits actually did come before the council, and it was when Mr. Leonardis was mayor, and it was something that was discussed by the council. It was a public hearing where the public was invited to weigh in, and as been indicated, nobody moved forward to do it. There was no public outcry or request. There was no movement on the part of the council, and so we did not do it. Now, I will also say, as a person who has been on this council, that there is a benefit to having a knowledge of the institutional knowledge. I'm finding now that I have a lot of information that other individuals don't have. I have information that staff doesn't have, and I am happy and proud to be able to share with whomever wants to listen to me.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with you, Ms. Spector. Now that we've lost most of the car dealerships in Los Gatos that provided an incredible amount of tax revenue, what ideas, plans do you have to make up for this lost revenue, which is needed to maintain the quality of life and services in our town?
Thank you. One thing that I want to speak to is in the question, it says the loss of tax revenue. And that's something that you hear people say, but is not actually accurate. Our sales tax revenue budgeted for this year is $8.1 million. Last year, our sales tax revenue budgeted for this coming year is $8.2 million. Sometimes you hear people say that the sales tax for the town of Los Gatos is decreasing. But what that fails to understand is that it is decreasing because the projection assumed a certain decline in Netflix's DVD rentals. When that decline at Netflix was sharper than was budgeted, then that gave the numbers of our having a decreased tax sales basis. But the reality is we do not, except for that, significant decrease by Netflix and its DVD sales.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
I am going to be someone who says that we have a sales tax decrease and that it's not due to Netflix. We got a report from the town manager at the end of August that our sales tax is down 7.8%, which is at a 10-year low for across the town. That is not reflected in similar communities like Campbell, Los Altos. So when I think about what I would do with respect to that, I don't really think about it in economic terms, so of course it's responsible to think of it that way. But I think of why is it down? And if I look at the downtown, I say, well, one reason it's not down is because of the North 40, because it's not built. So why else would it be down? Is there too much traffic coming into town? And I've been working on ideas for that traffic. Is our downtown not as vital and vibrant as it could be as compared to other communities? Could we have some lessening of restrictions that would allow innovation? So those are the kinds of things that I would like to look at and explore as to how we could make our entire town more attractive and perhaps raise revenue.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
Well, that's an interesting question. There's a lot of aspects I see why it's declined, and I'll agree it's declined a bit. With the DVD lack of sales on Netflix and streaming, there is no tax currently. The other issue would be the downtown area. When we do road closures for surveys and we have limited traffic going in or there's gridlock, people are not wanting to come down to Los Gatos and use their funds at our businesses and restaurants. I've had numerous people actually contact me in reference to the inability to get into town. Also with the upgrading of the roadways along Winchester. What used to take 5 minutes is taken over 10 minutes just to get through at times on a normal day. That impacts our town. And without the sales, we're not going to see the taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Maggio. Over the past few years, the town has had to consider having the county sheriff take over the law enforcement effort for Los Gatos. So far, that effort has stayed with our fine local police force. How do each of you view this matter, Mr. Maggio?
My view for contracting to the sheriff's office is a bad idea for the town of Los Gatos. What they would propose for funding versus what it would actually turn out would cost our town more money. You have a personalized service from our local police. Those officers that work for us are actually, they consider that our home. That's their home. They chose to work here, and they're dedicated officers. You get personalized service with that police department, and that's one thing you do not want to get rid of in this town.
Thank you. Ms. Spector.
Thank you. I agree. There have been murmurings in the past years about we should, get the county sheriff because our department is too expensive. But that's where it ends, because if you talk to the mass of the people in our community, they really like our police department. They like the fact that they know who they are, the fact that they go to the schools, and it's just, changing to the sheriff has no traction. Now, that doesn't mean that as council members, we don't look at salaries for the sheriff and every other department. But the police department is such an integral part of our community and is so well liked. I haven't seen, like I said, any traction for replacing them with the county sheriff.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
Los Gatos has a great police department. They're a part of our community. They work with our kids. They work with Safe Routes to School. And if we wanted to see how we get service from them, we only need to look at how they stepped up for our traffic control experiments, both this past summer in stepping out and doing overtime to close streets, direct traffic, talk to frustrated drivers, redirect people, and be out there on their overtime to do that. They really stepped up, and they step up with our schools. As Ms. Spector said, that doesn't mean that as responsible public servants, we should not be looking at costs associated with our police department. So when I was mayor, we did enter into negotiations with Montecito where we could recover more costs for Montecito because Montecito wasn't quite paying their fair share. So we did renegotiate the contract when I was mayor just to get more funds and resources out of Montecito. And we also got a report, an independent report. Well, some say not independent, but I'll say independent, from Les White, who was our interim town manager, about the costs of changing.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with you, Ms. Jensen. What is your view of building multi-level parking structures downtown to better handle traffic and support our downtown businesses?
Well, as mayor, I appointed, I think, the ad hoc infrastructure committee that and parking committee that Ms. Spector talked about. So I have been an advocate of trying to reach different solutions. At our last council meeting, we discussed seating and parking downtown. I made the motion to change back to the policy committee to explore all kinds of stuff, including parking garage, multi-level parking garage, which we sent out for not for bids, to negotiate with a contractor. Shared parking agreements, valet parking. Holtz just started valet parking last week. Perhaps employee parking permits, different ideas to get people out of their cars and make spaces available. And so the more we can figure out a comprehensive way to do that, the better. If we are able to fund a parking garage for downtown, that would be great. But so yes, I'm in favor of that, but I'm also in favor of looking at it more broadly for how are we going to manage our traffic and parking in Los Gatos.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
Well, on the parking issue in downtown with the parking structure, I was hoping that we would be able to do something with that where we can actually build multi-level parking structure to bring more people into the downtown, which would allow us to flourish more. I know the current plan probably has the housing that's on top of it with also some business front along Main Street that I would like to see those homes maybe try to figure out how we can get and relocate that housing project that's supposed to be on top to allow more parking for us. But we'd also like to see the structure not change the looks of our downtown with being so high as well. The parking spaces along the other areas, I see a tendency to be kind of tight and short, which is sometimes it's a problem, especially with people with larger vehicles. The object is we want more people to come into downtown and enjoy our downtown.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
Thank you. As I said, I was one of the council people working on this project. And let me first of all start out by saying you may hear disputes about one thing or the other in our town, but you talk to business owners, property owners, visitors, service people. Everybody says we need more parking in downtown, and we've never been able to do it. And one of the reasons we've never been able to do it is that we haven't had the property. Now, We have the property because it's RDA property. We've already purchased it with redevelopment funds. Secondly, we have to build at least 6 below market rate units there. That will happen under this proposal. Third, the council wanted at least 300 parking spaces. That will happen under this proposal. And four, the developer who is developing it has to make some money. He's giving us parking spaces. So how does the developer make his money? And that is with the fair market rate units. And they have proposed, I think at this juncture, 14 or 15. But the town is now going forward with the negotiations with the developer. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question has two parts. Do you support the Transportation Initiative Measure B that's on the ballot that entails a half-cent tax increase on the sales tax? And do you support mass transit in the median on Highway 85? So we'll begin with you, Ms. Spector.
Let's start with the mass transit in the median. No. We, Los Gatos, have a contract with VTA. In fact, we're in litigation over that contract because we were supposed to keep that available. So that is step number one. Secondly, with regard to Measure B, I worked throughout this summer with Matt Morley, who's head of Parks and Public Works, and to get as many benefits as we could for the town of Los Gatos under Measure B. And we did that because other jurisdictions had already done it, i.e. Palo Alto got the Caltrans benefits and the city of San Jose received the BART benefits. We do have benefits for the town of Los Gatos. Whether or not they are consistent with the amount of tax dollars we put in, I am not yet certain. I will not be making a public recommendation to our citizens on Measure B, and I think I'll probably be making my own decision shortly before I vote.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
I have publicly endorsed Measure B. As mayor, I did meet initially with West Valley mayors to get a voice with VTA on regional issues. As mayor, we also considered Highway 85 litigation, which we decided to enter into with respect to the median, where we do have an agreement as to how it gets used. I also spent last summer, and as a member of the VTA Policy Advisory Committee and the Highway 85 Advisory Committee, working on solutions with respect to traffic and also working on things that Los Gatos can get in Measure B. And the agreements that we've received are making me endorse the measure, which are the possibility of traffic's school buses for Los Gatos, improvements to the Highway 9 interchanges with 17, the possibility that we can use funds to purchase a lot for corporate buses at the Vasona, the Fantasy Vasona Light Rail Station, and very real benefits for Los Gatos from that measure. So I'm supporting it.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
It'll be out tomorrow on the Los Gatos Weekly, but I'm not in support of Measure B. It's a half-cent tax hike for 30 years. It's going to produce us billions of dollars to go towards the major projects of the BART expansion, the light rail that's that they're proposing, also Grand Central type stations between San Jose and Santa Clara. But our number one problem here in Los Gatos is our main artery that goes through here, which is Highway 17. We're averaging 54,000 cars over that roadway every day. We also are anticipating in 10 years, 90,000. We are not set up for the infrastructure on that to have the capacity that's going to incur. Why are we using that kind of money, which we'll only see a fraction of, to not try to better the number one dangerous road in California? They want to put a bullet train from San Jose down to LA, but yet, and that's $62 billion, but yet we have the most dangerous highway, and we need to have at least lanes going up to the top of Summit so we can relieve our traffic problem.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Maggio. With the emphasis on deregulating downtown, for example, allowing Soul Cycle to consolidate 4 separate retail spaces, reducing opportunities for small local shops, allowing entertainment with the only control being our noise ordinance, noise ordinance and increasing seating capacity with no parking, how can we keep our look and feel and charm of downtown? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Maggio.
Well, deregulation means it's on them to do what they want to do. I've dealt with deregulation in the company I work for, AT&T. That was a Ma Bell years ago, and they did deregulation. It left the customers with their own way of doing their phone systems in their properties. This would also have the impact of the same theory. You give the control back to the businesses to do what they want. That could create situations for our town. And then what do we do when we have problems with it? We're going to have to come back to the board here and come up with ideas to put more regulations on them afterwards. We have rules with the noise ordinances. That's because the community's requested that kind of stuff. And we've got those things in place because that's what the community wants. The biggest thing is the community. We want to be able to do things for the community because we need to listen to the community and take those ideas and put them in place.
Thank you. And Ms. Spector?
Thank you. The regulations for downtown specifically are very important to me, and they always have been. We have conditional use permits for the downtown because they do a balancing, and they balance one right against the other right. If you begin to change that balance, that creates an unbalance. The same thing with seating. We have a reason that we have seating associated with certain amount of parking places. We have a reason that we have the noise staying down at a certain decibel level. I understand that there are individuals who might want us to change these rules, but I would change them very cautiously and think about what you are going to create when you get rid of these rules that we have worked so hard to structure and balance our interests.
Thank you. And Ms. Jensen?
There's a difference between deregulation and no regulation. What I advocate is a modification to the structure that we have in place, which I think now is hamstringing our businesses from being innovative. We have stuck them in a position where we cannot convert retail to restaurant. We cannot put a formula retail in. We cannot, until just last year, I think when I was mayor, we couldn't really, without a whole CUP process, have outdoor seating. And that is just not attractive to people when we live in such a beautiful place and we want to enjoy the weather and sit outside. So the entertainment policy actually does have restrictions. You have to get a permit after 10 p.m., but it makes sense to tell people follow the law. And I would like our downtown to be like I remember when the Brazil soccer team was here. Maybe some people remember it fondly, some people don't. But we closed down the street. We went down to Willow Street. It was great. We had fun. Those kinds of events and that kind of vibrancy is what I'd like to bring back to Los Gatos. Those are the things that bring the community together, and that's what I'd like to see for our downtown.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with you, Ms. Jensen. What is your position on the annexation of county pockets within Los Gatos?
Well, Los Gatos actually has an agreement with the county right now, which is if you're within 300 feet of a county boundary and you do something major to your house, you get annexed in. So if you remodel or your house gets destroyed, you get annexed. We have an agreement with the county. But with respect to larger pockets, for example, the manor, that needs to be brought forward through a whole government process and has to have a vote with those people to decide that they want to become part of Los Gatos or not. So that's an entirely different process. But if we're just talking about the one house that gets annexed in, we actually do have an agreement. Do I think it makes sense to have a county pocket that's right in the middle of Los Gatos be part of Los Gatos? Sure, but that's not my decision to make. That's for the voters in those communities to decide that they want to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
Annexing property, making our town larger, that has an effect as growing. Our town started out at 6,600 acres, and it's grown to over 10,000 acres. We start adding more and more. All of a sudden, our town becomes more like a higher populated city. And we don't want our city or this town to become a city. We want to keep our town a town and keep our population to a certain amount. We do have to grow, though, because we have more people coming in, we have more people living longer, and with that, with the annexation of properties, yeah, we have the rules with the adding on when somebody does something to their property, but yeah, it should be left up to the people of those areas if they want to become part of Los Gatos. And
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
Thank you. Institutional knowledge. There was a period of time, many meetings ago, many years ago, when the town gave the opportunity to pockets of county members to come forward, and we were going to, make them part of Los Gatos. They filled these chambers, and they had pitchforks. They did not want to do it, all right? So we did not vote to annex them. And no one has come forward en masse since that time. But as been said, when you have these individuals come forward, and that happens probably several times a year, where individual land owners come forward and we do annex them. And I think that's good. It's an efficient use of resources, and I think that is a good thing. But if you think that we're going to have an en masse annexation, then you know something that I don't know.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with you, Ms. Spector. It is increasingly obvious that our town needs to become more active in regional and state decisions. If you are elected or re-elected, what regional state issues would you prioritize?
I agree that the town has to become more involved, and that is because, I'll give you the ones I would prioritize. The town has the RHNA, regional housing numbers, imposed upon us. The town has density bonus imposed upon us. And then most recently, within this past spring and summer, there has been legislation by local legislators and by the governor to have by right, that is by right approval. So right now, we have some discretion at the town level. If you come forward, we can still do architecture and site, which means you get a look at it and have some input. But by right, which is the governor was proposing and local legislators were proposing, eliminates even that level. The town did get involved. I sent a letter with regard to this along with other mayors, but we really have to keep our eyes out open and our ears open, and we have to send letters and we have to lobby whenever we can.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
As I mentioned earlier, I have worked on regional traffic issues. I hope to continue to work on regional traffic issues because cars, unfortunately, do not stop at the border of Los Gatos. So we really need to have our regional expressways, our county expressways, and our freeways working, because if 17 is working, there's not a lot of incentive for you to come off and go through Los Gatos. So I will work on those. As Ms. Spector mentioned, our regional housing numbers are very important for us to get involved in. When our numbers were set, the last housing cycle, every 7 years, ABAG tells us how many houses to build. Right now, it's 619. The criteria that were used to set our numbers, we didn't have any input in, so we're starting early and often to have input into that now, because those numbers are going to get changed and be important. The other thing we can do to work beyond Los Gatos and regionally on that is that we can combine together with other cities and towns, as some people in the West Valley and South Bay do, to combine those RHNA numbers so the burden isn't all on us. So those are important things that we need to do.
Thank you. Mr. Maggio?
On the regional side, we have numbers that we get, and they dictate to us on our 8-year, 7-year, 8-year plan that we need to identify areas to improve or to develop. We're not in the business of building. That's left to the private sector. Our job is to look at and see what we can identify. With that, I like to see, we're running out of room in Los Gatos, and I like to see things go up to the state level to say, listen, that rule that you guys came out with, that law in 1969, we're getting capacitated. So there needs to be an adjustment on that. And what's going to take is probably our community, everybody banding together to write letters and do everything so we can let them know up there, hey, this is what's going on, and God only made so much land for us.
Thank you. The next question refers to the fiscal health of the town. And it's a long question, and it relates to the payments that have to be made annually to CalPERS. And the town has been very religious in making their payments every year on time. It's not a payment in full, but rather a payment in part as required by CalPERS. But not only do we owe that money, we pay interest at a rate of 7.5% every year, and at this rate, we can double our debt every 8 to 10 years. We are not alone with this huge problem. Many cities have it. How are you going to resolve this rising debt that will soon dominate our budget and force cutbacks in personnel and infrastructure maintenance? Mr. Maggio.
Well, on the CalPERS issue, I know that we're behind because it was the issues that came up, and most cities had that. A while back, I lived in Hollister, and Hollister was pretty much bankrupt. We had to eliminate the chief of the fire department. We almost had to eliminate the high ranks up in the police department there as well. We also had the water treatment plants that were taking a big chunk of stuff that was not helping us out as far as the budget. In Los Gatos, I know that there's been a payment plan, and it's gonna take time. That half-cent tax on Measure B, if that gets voted in, our tax is going to go up, and we're going to have a short room if we have to have any local taxes increase just to make up something that we need to pay off. That's why I need to say we need to reserve those taxes for the benefit of us in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Spector.
Thank you. To put this in context, what we're talking about here is the state of California, CalPERS. It was supposed to fund our retiree pensions, except they assumed a 7.5% return on investment, and it's more like 1% or less. And so when they don't make enough money on their investments, then they assess the cities, they assess the towns for the shortfall. And so they are assessing Los Gatos for the shortfall. I believe that for the pensions alone right now, it's something like $33 million. However, they do allow you to pay over time, and we are paying, $2.2 million. Now, the problem with that is paying over time, you're paying with interest, so we're paying 7.5% on that payout over time, and our monies are getting something like 1%. One of the things that the Finance Committee, that's Mr. Leonardis and I, proposed to the council is that we make some big payments so that we shorten the number of years from 30 years to 20 years. And I have to stop now.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen.
The unfunded pension liabilities is something that we've all heard about both in town, statewide, and countywide. Of course, our safety personnel deserve to have a good retirement. They also, fortunately, are living a lot longer than they used to, as are the rest of our employees. And they are entitled to that retirement. Sometimes, what's the strategy? Sometimes you renegotiate, you get some give-backs from those personnel. Sometimes you do a strategy like we did a couple years ago on the council, and we paid down $4 million on a side note on our pensions to reduce the amount that we were going to owe overall. Sometimes you discuss whether you're going to fund it through some kind of tax, and I know that our ad hoc citizens committee was looking at various options, both in terms of pensions and in terms of capital improvements, and they came forward to us with different recommendations. So it's a very difficult question. The town has limited funds. CalPERS is a moving target of what they want us to pay. Sometimes it's 1%, sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 10%, sometimes it's 0%. Fortunately, Los Gatos has been paying money into it all along, but that doesn't mean that we don't owe in the future and have to figure this out.
Thank you. That concludes our audience questions. We are now ready to move on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and you're encouraged to mention anything that did not come up in the Q&A that you think is important and should be stated. And we're going to do this in the reverse order, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Maggio.
There we go. I chose to run for town council to work hard for the people of Los Gatos, to be a voice, a new voice, a voice of change, one that I can be with the people, of the people. When I was military police, we had a motto, of the troops, for the troops. I live by that kind of motto with everything I do in life. And here I am, a citizen of Los Gatos. I am of the community, for the community. I chose to run for council to represent you and work very hard. I'm very proud of the accomplishments I've done in the past, and I see great things for Los Gatos. But we as a community need to be able to be transparent, be able to communicate, and work very hard to accomplish the things we need to do. Those issues of traffic and housing, those are things that we can get through, but as a community and working hard, I'm here to work very hard for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jensen?
When I introduced myself this evening, I said that I was proud that I had started forming partnerships with various parts of our community, with our schools, with our residents, and with our business community. I would like to continue that and work to resolve issues and bring what I am going to call, I hope, or I'm proud of, the can-do attitude that I have shown in my 4 years on the council to tackle issues as they come up. When I first started in this council, the biggest thing in the world was the gun store. We appointed an ad hoc firearms committee and wrote ordinances. Myself and Mr. Brzezinski served on a subcommittee and wrote those and brought them forward. The gun store isn't here anymore. Now the big issue is the North 40, it's traffic. As mayor, I started the first diversion traffic program. So as issues have arisen, I've tried to get out front and tackle them and form partnerships and listen to the community. I enjoy doing that. I hope you have confidence in me that I will continue to do the hard work and the research that it takes to do this job responsibly and correctly and always with the best interests of the town at heart.
Thank you. Ms. Spector?
Thank you. On November 8th, that's the date of the election, you are going to be selecting 2 of the 3 of us to be your council members. Now, when I started my presentation, I talked about the big issues coming forward to the town, my history and experience with each of those issues, the North 40, unfunded liabilities, and so forth. And that is all true. However, what you have to think about is that this council makes hundreds of decisions each year that are not high profile, that are not filled with people in the audience giving us verbal communications or testimony or sending us letters or sending us emails. So once you elect the people, sometimes you will be giving us input and a lot of input, but for the most part, we make 100, 200 decisions each year without a significant amount of public input. And so therefore, you have to have faith and in the people that you elect. So how will I make my decisions when I don't have 1,000 emails from you telling me what you want me to do? How will I make my decisions? I actually have a criteria, and it is I will bring to each decision my experience, I will bring to each decision my common sense, and I will bring to each decision something I have always had since I moved here in 1973, is a love for this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our forum. I would like to thank the candidates, I would like to thank the candidates for participating tonight. I would also like to thank all the volunteers who have made this forum possible, the League of Women Voters of Southwest Santa Clara Valley, including the timers, the question sorters, the program planners and setup, and our 2 voter service directors, Wendy Hendry and Kathy Murfelt. This forum has been designed to impart information to you, the voter, in accordance with our belief, the League's belief, that a democratic government depends upon informed and active participation of its citizens. We hope that the insights you have gained from this forum will aid you in your decision-making. The League has also been hosting pros and cons presentations on the 17 ballot measures, the 2 county measures, A and B, and there's 1 local measure for Los Gatos that's also on the ballot. We are also hosting 2 very informative meetings in November 12th on how the water bond money is being spent, and November 14th on clean energy. Please feel free to pick up information, excuse me, that is in the lobby about these events. Excuse me. Lastly, for more voter information, we have been recommending that people go to a website, Voters Edge, and unfortunately we found out that it's not actually up to date. But you can certainly go into the League of Women Voters of Southwest Santa Clara Valley and find all of our information on there. But the most important thing is, please remember to vote on November 8th and help make our democracy work. Thank you for coming tonight.